Neither Better Trades or any of its personnel are registered broker-dealers or investment advisors. I will mention that I consider certain securities or positions to be good candidates for the types of strategies we are discussing or illustrating. Because I consider the securities or positions appropriate to the discussion or for illustration purposes does not mean that I'm telling you to trade the strategies or securities. Keep in mind that we are not providing you with recommendations or personalized advice about your trading activities. The information we are providing is not tailored to any particular individual. Any mention of a particular security is not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold that or any other security or a suggestion that it is suitable for any specific person. Keep in mind that all trading involves a risk of loss, and this will always be the situation regardless of whether we are discussing strategies that are intended to limit risk. Also, Better Trades personnel are not subject to trading restrictions. I and others at Better Trades could have a position in a security or initiate a position in a security at any time.
Hello, and welcome out to another Insights. We are going to dive into several things today. This might be a lengthy session. We'll see. I might be able to get it through quickly. I may not. We'll just have to. I'm just going to wing it. I always say that I want to do it quickly and try to run through things, but then I always find a squirrel or something that I get excited about and something I want to cover and that I think is important. So, but before we get started, let's do this. And I just happened to stumble across this, and I just liked it. I thought it was perfect. So, and considering we're through January almost, but so we're basically 1/12 through the year, but still, I love this. I've already decided that 2016 is going to be ridiculously amazing, and it is. It's already starting off that way. So I'm looking forward to another great year, and it just seems to get better and better all the time. So anyway, hopefully it's just as good for you. And the beauty is that we really can't go backwards, right? I mean, the only way to go is forward. And when it comes to trading, considering the challenges that we have trading and how difficult it can be, it's just a matter of improving and getting better day by day, and just little steps here and there. And most of it's just a matter of retraining our mind to think in a way that is advantageous to us. So let's all get better at that, and we will do it together. So let's get rolling here and adjust some things here. And just look at the overall market. And looking at kind of a close-in picture like this is, oh man. And I keep trying this. This thing, Extreme Charts, is still glitchy. It's still having the lines jump. And I tried doing an update today to see if maybe they have a new build out, hoping that they've gotten that glitch fixed. I don't know why it's not, but I did the update. And of course, it changed all my settings. Put these lines on and did all this, and I notice now on the right side there's a whole bunch of it just looks a lot cluttered, a lot more cluttered than it used to be with the numbers and stuff. I don't know if they're bigger. It just doesn't look exactly right, so I had to fix a few things. Needless to say, I mean, the charts are still there. I got the settings redone fairly quickly, so hopefully you don't have the same issue. If you do and you need help, call tech support. They'll take care of you. But anyway, we'll see. I'll get things adjusted back if necessary. I think it's okay right now. But looking at the S&P and looking at this time frame, it looks like we're bouncing, and you can see what happened obviously a week and a half ago, as we've talked about, is the bounce there where we broke below that 1867 just for the day, though. I mean, intraday, and it barely closed below there, but not by much, and it bounced back. But what it looks like we've got, and what you can see, the big difference between the last drop-off back here in August, I mean, that was not only was it only 5 days, it was a massive sell-off, very quick, accelerated very quickly, but then it bounced just as hard, not quite as far. Obviously, it only made it about halfway up, but that big giant bounce gave it the opportunity to gain a little momentum and have another rally. Whereas here, not only have we had a slower, steadier sell-off, granted we had a big hammer pattern, but then the bounce, there's really not been much of a bounce. I mean, it's only bounced a tiny bit. So not terribly bullish, I don't think. It's entirely possible this thing could just be, gauging it, and then it's going to bounce from here. It's hard to say. It's almost like the bulls and bears are in a tug of war right now. They're trying to figure out, okay, can we hold this level? The bulls are kind of testing the waters, it looks like, and they're trying to figure out, can we keep it up here? And if they can push it higher, then I wouldn't be surprised to see it run back up to 2,000, kind of like it did this last time, right? It bounced for 2 days, then dropped off, and then it fought back up for about 2 weeks, ran up and hit the 2,000 mark, and then it sold off. Tested the bottom again, and then it launched from there. But this time it's behaving differently. Not only did we sell off a little bit slower, but it hasn't bounced anywhere near, it hasn't retraced halfway, which maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if it doesn't, and if it breaks below this 1867, then I would expect another fairly sizable drop. If it does bounce, yeah, about a 50% retracement, which could be anywhere between that 1950 and 2000 mark. But then I'd be looking for another move to the downside. As you can see, we've got lower highs and lower lows, even on the short term before it broke down here a few weeks ago. So we go back and look at the bigger picture here. And this is where it gets intriguing because we've got, even though it's not really a head and shoulders, especially if we go to a weekly chart, it's definitely not a beautiful one. But if you consider this area here to be the left shoulder and then a big giant head and then a right shoulder, head and shoulders is definitely there. Whether it's textbook or not, the pattern itself is basically there. So it definitely does not look bullish right now. I think longer term we're bearish. We're going to be bearish longer term. It's the question of, and considering we're short-term traders, the question is what's going to happen in the next few days or the next few weeks. And right now it's hard to say. We get above that 1910 area and close up there, then we're probably going to run back to the 1950-2000 level. If we break 1867, there's not much there. I mean, there's those minor kind of support levels that are there to hold it up a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised, especially if it moves quickly, to see 1815 fast, and if it breaks that, 1850 or 1750, somewhere in that area, would probably be would come up pretty fast, I would think. So take a look through the other markets. They're going to look basically the same. There's NASDAQ, very similar picture. Transports, still very bearish. Still not really looking bullish at all. Russell, Russell's still not. It was flat today. So while the rest of the markets were up a little bit, we don't have data yet. Wait a minute. Let's see. Yeah, 125. That was at 125. So yeah, Russell was flat for the day. So it looks almost like just a stall out of the fall, and the fall will probably continue is what I think is going to happen. Has had the VIX has kind of settled in a little bit. I'll get into charts, specific charts. We'll go look through the big guys. And there we are today. ABC just cracking down big time. It was interesting. Very mixed kind of stuff today. About half were up, half were down. Some Amazon was up like 40 or 50 points today. Google was up a bunch this morning, 20 or 30 points. Some big gainers and then some big losers. ABC was one of those that dropped off big time. So if you caught that, awesome. AGN, another one that let's see. I'm thinking here, just kind of thinking out loud. I don't remember. There's AGN, another one, cracking down as well. The head and shoulders is playing out beautifully. Anthem went the opposite direction we were looking for. AON, still not really there. This today, I mean, you can see, which, I don't know, I've had dividends today. Obviously, it's one of those that, this is where being able to watch intraday charts and seeing, and considering earnings is coming up anyway, probably wouldn't be in this, but this is one of those tricky ones that, was up a bunch. I mean, you're talking, it closed yesterday 85.5, ran to 88, was up $2.50, but only closed up 48 cents. So, and those are the ones that are kind of roughed to play with. So, Bristol Myers, no surprise, has gone the opposite direction with earnings coming out. So, and that's the hard part. An earnings season like this is tough. Crown really never gave us an opportunity to get in. Gapped above the entry point, did pull back to it, but reality is we probably wouldn't catch it. And earnings was there too. So that's why I'm kind of breezing through. That's why it's hard to gauge because, with a lot of these that have earnings, it's like, what's the point of even looking at them? Same thing here with CHD, Church and Dwight. What are household products? They come out with earnings on the 2nd next week. So beautiful, beautiful head and shoulders. Textbook play out right now. That's what we're looking for. But with earnings, it's hard to even pull the trigger on a lot of these. So CHRW not going the right direction. EIX just triggered an entry today. Not a whole lot of volume, so not terribly excited about this. I remember looking at it and going, yeah, the volume's kind of light. So I didn't get into it. But if it pulls back, really this is the tricky part. A lot of utilities have been fairly bullish. But with light volume like that, I'm not terribly excited about it. Even though, it broke out last week with pretty sizable volume that had light volume yesterday, or well, it was the other day it broke out. So it may have been a good opportunity, but I don't know. There's sometimes you just don't feel it in your gut, and I just left it alone. I just didn't want to play with it. So EQR, excuse me, breaking through, but we got earnings coming up here too on the 2nd next week. So that's it's just par for the course, just what happened. So this is one that really gapped around the entry point, so no real opportunity there. ETR. Another one, beautiful breakout. Thing looks great. The challenging, the hard part is this run so far so fast. The question is, when does it slow down? And the volume today was weak, very weak. And I'm not excited about breakouts on weak volume, especially considering the market conditions. And what I'm expecting is the market to roll over and head back down. So with that expectation, with that vision, if you will, I'm not excited about getting into bullish positions. But then again, sometimes it's good to pick up, just a small position, maybe a couple contracts here or there, just in case. You never know, right? There's no sense in letting fear take over. EW, well, if you'd gotten in one of the other days, you'd have been stopped out already. So, and earnings is coming up. This is what's so hard about this time of year is, once a quarter, about 2 or 3 weeks, there's tons of earnings coming out. So MMP, same thing. We've got earnings coming out soon. Nike has earnings behind us. And crazy thing is yesterday it triggered an entry point. Today it would have stopped you out. So hopefully that didn't happen. But if it did, it's I hate to say it, but it's trading. It is what it is. This is what happened. So Realty Income needed to pull back, and it hasn't. It's run up and almost hit the target, but we missed. There's no opportunity there when it goes like that without coming back to us. So Raytheon earnings came out today. Obviously, it appears that that's the earnings move. They should have come out this morning, I'm assuming. So we'll see what happens with this. It might be worth flipping the plan over. We'll take a look at it probably in the morning and see what it's doing. Might want to move the plan up. If it starts to roll over, it gives any indication of a bearish move tomorrow, then moving the stop above the resistance that it's at right now and adjusting the plan might be viable. But until that, that's the thing. I could do it right now and change all the numbers and go through that. And, it only takes a couple minutes. But if we're looking at tomorrow and it gaps up to 126, I just wasted a couple minutes for nothing. Vulcan Materials, that thing's just been dancing around that, hitting it, and doing exactly what we want, actually. But the volume's super light, which is not necessarily bullish or bearish, but that is most likely because of earnings coming up here in about a week. And then Yum Brands, looking for it to break down, and it did not. Now what we've got is a whole bunch of potential little guys. And some of these aren't really going to, I got 37. That's the most I've had on a little guy's list for a long time. And pulled these yesterday based on patterns and looking for them. And I know that, well, basically because of the style of trading I do, that's the beauty that I like about it now. I never really realized until just a few months ago is that it's not one of those things where, if you don't find something right this second or you don't find it instantly, or I used to be in this kind of a panic mode where it was always like I'm constantly looking on edge for the next opportunity, and if I don't get it now right this second, then it's gone. And I've realized that that's just not the case. So I don't panic and freak out anymore like I used to. I just go with the flow, because the trades are the trades, and even if you miss it today, in the next 3 or 4 days, you're probably going to get an opportunity to catch it. If you missed it, oh well, because there's always trades to be had anyway. Like this one, American Airlines. Of course, they have earnings though too. So, which just dropped off today. It looks like they're coming out tomorrow. I'm not sure if it's before or after. But obviously not going to trade it before then, so that one really doesn't matter, kind of a moot point. ABX gold stocks have taken off, which no surprise with the rest of the market. People are going to start looking for safe havens again, and gold may be one of them. And, I mean, it certainly looks, based on a lot of the gold stocks, like people are flocking back into gold. It's gotten so cheap now that people want it. They want it they just probably will, I'm guessing. But then again, it's done this before. When we look at the longer term picture, you can see, I mean, just using stocks as a barometer, if you will. I mean, when gold peaked out back in, what was that, 2011? I mean, that's about when the prices of the stocks did, at least. You know, gold may have peaked out a little before that, but they're going to be pretty close. And you can see what this thing's done. I mean, in 01, with the whole September, the September 11th stuff, that really helped gold skyrocket. And you can see how it's, it took off in 07 when the market crashed, peaked out at 08, and then dropped right back down. And then it fought its way back up to, and this is ABX, but fought its way back up to 50, and now we're here at $6. In fact, this is not an all-time low, but it hasn't been down to the low that it just had at $6 since 1990. And that's a 25-year low. There comes a point where people are going to say, you know what, gold's looking attractive again because the price is so low. So gold stocks will most likely follow with that. So that's really what I'm looking for here, is this thing to break out to the upside. There's some pretty substantial potential. There's $2. $2 on a $10.50 stock, that's what, 17, 18, 19%? So if this thing takes off, and I'm probably looking at 2 to 4 weeks for this thing to move. The hard part, the thing that makes me nervous about it, is the fact that it's already moved from 780 to 10. So it's already moved 20% in a week. But then again, if something's as oversold as gold is, wouldn't be surprised to see it just continue to run. So very possible, and we will just see what happens. So Archer Daniels Midland looking for it to break to the downside, but obviously today it popped back up. But then again, earnings is coming out the 2nd of next week. No surprise. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because a lot of them have earnings. This one's not we got earnings AMX for a week or two. So nice little double bottom pattern. Broke out of the midpoint there. I was kind of on the fence with this one. Most of these I'm lukewarm on, basically, is a good way to put it. Broke out of the midpoint, basically using that midpoint as a support level. So if it drops back down and bounces there, then there may be an opportunity to jump in here. So, but it's got to happen next week at the latest, probably mid next week. It's got to give us an entry point. So Activision, again, earnings the 3rd, just broke today a little bit. Did not break down significantly. I mean, decent volume, a little tiny increase in volume. But and I just noticed this thing has an average volume of 10 million. That means that the options are most likely pretty liquid, kind of like Alcoa. I mean, Alcoa trades, I don't remember what it is, tons. I've got to look now out of curiosity. 40 million shares a day. Okay, Activision is only 10, but still 10 is a lot for a smaller stock. So this one we'll see what happens with this tomorrow, but it's tough with earnings on the 3rd, because the 3rd is, it's a week from yesterday, so it's only 6. You got tomorrow. You got basically 3 or 4 trading days before earnings comes out. So hard to pull that off. It can happen, but AU, another gold stock, and you can see it's popped up. Of course, it dropped off today. Big, actually, 61 cents. Did they not have earnings? That looks more like an earnings move, but that's a huge move. You can see this, but this is another one too. Has been beat up big time. I mean, it was at $54, and now it's at 7 or 8. So there comes a point. These are all-time lows for this company. And there's the other beauty, is that, and this is one of those things, and this just hit my brain. This is why sometimes I go a little longer than planned. Especially this one, Angle Gold is not that old. I mean, you look at the company; it's been around since, I guess, 98. So yeah, it's almost 20 years old. But the reality is this: if the entire sector is beat up, their stocks are beat up, at some point, the bigger players like Newmont, GG, I believe is, they will most likely come in and start buying up some of the smaller guys. So you've got companies when they're publicly traded like this, they can do a hostile takeover, or they can come in and buy it for 15 or 20 bucks a share and do well and add to their portfolio, if you will. So, I mean, that's essentially how a lot of these big companies work. I mean, you take GE. I mean, GE's in a bunch of different sectors. Well, they're in the financial services sector. They make washers and dryers. They make refrigerators. They make appliances. There we go. I mean, they make jet engines. What doesn't GE do? I mean, it's just kind of crazy. They're just a conglomerate of different companies, and that's essentially what GE does. Is they go buy up companies that are profitable and do their thing in sectors or in industries that they know and they're familiar with. They're in financial services. I don't know if I said that, but they will also, if they get into an industry or a business that they don't think is, or it's not performing well, or for some reason they stink at it, they'll sell it off. So I mean, it's almost like GE is nothing more than it is considered a conglomerate, which they basically just own a bunch of companies, and they just run the companies. I mean, it's not anything spectacular, but a lot of gold companies, once they get to a certain size, granted they're mining companies, but once you grow to a certain rate and you have maybe a certain amount, you can't really grow or expand your business unless you start buying up the competition. And so it'd be a good idea to start watching the open interest on some of the options on some of these stocks, especially something like this, that, yeah, it's a 20-year-old company. I don't know anything about it fundamentally. I don't know anything about the management. I don't know if it's a possibility of a buyout candidate. But at $8, $8.25, even if they came in and paid $12 a share for it, they might be getting a spectacular deal considering, a few years ago this thing was trading at 50. So there's probably going to be some buyout candidates in the gold sector is what I'm getting at. And so keep an eye on not only the stocks themselves, but if you see some really crazy open interest on any gold stocks or any other stocks in any other sector that's been beat up, then there's a possibility of a takeover there. So it might be worth, tossing a little bit of risk at it. So, but AU looking for, this is another one just like ABX, has some pretty significant potential, almost $2 on a $9 entry point. That's well over 20%. Bed Bath & Beyond, looking for it to bounce at this level, but it's not. Well, it may still, but we'll see. That one's pretty much off the radar. ConAgra, looking for it to break down. It went the opposite today. CBS, looking for this to possibly go up. Earnings 11, so about 2 or 3 weeks away. But obviously that didn't happen today. It was looking for big bullish engulfing pattern on the bounce, but it has also triggered. I mean, it's hit that resistance level at 48.31 and dropped off. Problem is, it's too far to the next support level, so there's no sense in trying to trade this. That one's probably gone after today's move. Carnival. This is one of those that kind of is frustrating, but it's trading. It happens all the time. You have something sitting there, or you put it out and you look at it and you go, okay, it's probably gonna do this, and then the next day it takes off and runs. So that one's pretty much gone. ConAgra, or no, Cabot Oil. Oil, like gold, has bounced up quite a bit. We had a nice double bottom here. You can see it could be considered an inverted head and shoulders, but a nice little double bottom, broke out big time about a week ago and kind of settle in. I'm using that minor old resistance level as an entry point. And I like the looks of this, actually, even after today's action. So it gapped up this morning, it sold off quickly, and then it rallied back up, and then it sold off because I was looking at the intraday chart here. By the end of the day, it closed back down here. Pretty decent volume, so we'll see what tomorrow brings with this, but there may be some decent potential with this still. So we'll see what it does in the morning. Coach, another one that, missed it, kind of. I mean, the reality is, did you really miss it? Would we really have caught it? Because that's a big, in the earnings move like this, looking at the big gap from 30 to up to 33 the next day on earnings, the expectation typically is not for it to run like this over the last 2 days like it has. So, it generally speaking, doesn't do that. So, but we'll see. CTL, looking for it to drop off to the downside, but it is not. Figuring that it was just a bounce and the volume's getting lighter. So, and maybe today was the start of it. So it might just take off to the downside. We'll see. Cypress Semi earnings announcement, which we wouldn't have been in to trade it anyway. I mean, it looks beautiful. The candle does. Like, man, we should have been there. Well, it was earnings though. I mean, we don't trade earnings, so that's what makes this period challenging. But ETP, another one that bounced up for. We basically hit 20 and ran to 28 very quickly. And that's a what 40? Is that 40%? Well, yeah, 10% is $2. So if it runs $8 on a $20 stock, that's 40%. It's a 40% run in 4 or 5 days. What are the odds of it staying up? It's about the 50% mark of the downward move. So not terribly excited about this one, especially after today's action. So Acceleron, beautiful breakout, or Exelon, I should say. Good looking breakout to the upside. The challenge, and this is another one I looked at as well to see what was happening today, is the volume wasn't really huge, and then you've got earnings coming up next week. So here's the gold ETF. Typically don't look at ETFs, not terribly excited about them. And this one probably wouldn't even be ripe until late next week, maybe even the following week. The nice thing about ETFs is that there is no earnings on them. But the thing you have to be cautious with is if the ETF has 1 or 2 big players in it. In other words, say if this particular ETF, if Newmont is 30% of the holding of the ETF, and Newmont comes out with earnings, and Newmont moves big, whether up or down, it's going to move the entire ETF in a significant way. That's why I like the Qs. I don't know if you've all have seen the Qs or not, but the top 10, I want to say the top 10 stocks in the Qs make up like 25 or 30% of the entire ETF. So, and Apple, I think Apple used to be, or at least at one point was one of the biggest chunks of the Qs. So if Apple came out with earnings and it moved big, it would have a dramatic effect on the Qs. So you had to be aware of that if you're trading an ETF. Granted, there's no earnings on the Qs, but you had to be aware of the companies that were in there. So same thing with this. If you're going to trade this as an ETF, then maybe take a few minutes to go double check and see who's in there. I'm not a huge fan of this. It's too gappy as well. I almost kicked it off the list. I thought, well, we'll leave it there and just watch it, but I probably won't put it on there again. GG, another gold company. This is my favorite one out of all the gold stocks. The reason is it really hasn't moved a tremendous amount, relatively speaking. It has, but it hasn't. I mean, we're still looking at about $10 to 11. So it's only been about a 10, maybe 15% move. So I think there's still some pretty solid potential. I like the fact that it kind of stalled out today, and we're just barely above. For the second day, we've held above that 1090 area. We're basically right above 11. So if we take off and start to rally tomorrow, I would be fairly excited about GG. Unlike some of these others that I'm lukewarm on, GG I actually like. Then again, it is challenging because a lot of the other gold stocks, this is the other part that's hard, is that the other gold stocks have also moved big. So if the entire sector is, a little bit tired, basically they're needing a break, then GG is probably going to follow right along with them. So we'll see. But out of all the gold ones, this is the one that I would be looking at the most seriously. General Motors looking for a move to the downside. It's sitting right on the entry point. Earnings is next week, so it makes it challenging. If it moves quick, might want to jump in and see if you can catch a little piece of it. HDNP, this is one I love. This is probably my favorite. It's a biotech, it's pharma. It is extraordinarily volatile. You can see here back in August when things dropped, we're 32 to 16. I mean, the thing got cut in half in a week and a half. It's been dancing around there since, and it started to break down today. A little tiny increase in volume in the last couple days. But if it accelerates, then you can see what happened last time when it broke down below that 17. It dropped to 13 in 3 days. Actually, 2 days, realistically. So the potential for this thing to move quickly and go down and hit the target is pretty decent. It does have earnings the 8th, so that's a little ways out. JD, another one, JD.com. Not even sure exactly what. I thought I went and looked up these guys to see what they do. But a huge spike in volume the last couple days. Only technically down a penny today, but it gapped up this morning and then sold off. So looking for this to drop off tomorrow and hopefully get a position and see what happens the next week. Mattel looking for a bearish move, and it is not playing ball. Newmont, here's another perfect example of the gold stock that has run super far, super fast. 16 to almost 20, $4. That's, what is it, 30% or something like that. Now you see why GG looks better, because GG's only moved 10 or 15. A lot of these have moved 25 to 40%. The other stocks have. So GG's a little behind. Now, is that because there's something wrong with their business, or is it just because it's just behind? Who knows? But if the whole sector keeps running, then GG has the most potential, is the way I see it. So Newmont, if it breaks out of that resistance level, about 20 and a half, there's a buck and a quarter, buck and a half there to be had possibly. I like this one too. Oil has been beat up, as you can see. I mean, this thing was $85 or so just a year and a half ago, and here it is now 31. It's been cut by 60, 70%. Forming a little base here, and looks like it may want to run to the upside. The only challenge is earnings is the 3rd, so it would have to move quickly to the target. But even, even this is the beauty of it, is even if it gets halfway to the target and you have to get out right before earnings, then at least you made something, right? I mean, you made a little bit. It's better than nothing. NRG. Another utility. And this one you can see is actually forming a triple bottom. So it's bounced off there a little bit the last couple days. Not spectacular volume, so it's a little interesting. Not terribly excited about it. And you can see we've actually hit an all-time low. This company's only been public since 2004, but you can see how fast and far they took off, and they rallied from $8-9 at the opening, $10 to $40. They're up 400% basically in just a year or two, and then they crashed just as fast. Stabilized a little bit, and obviously in the last 2-3 years rallied back up to 36, but you can see the big crash we've had here. So it's interesting that the utility company, you would think, and this is what's so odd to me, and maybe I haven't really paid attention, or I haven't really thought about it a lot. You'd think that a utility company would be relatively stable. I mean, because I think of my own electric bill. I mean, it's pretty consistent. I mean, granted, in the wintertime it goes up, obviously, because of cold weather, but wouldn't they have a pretty steady cash flow? I mean, you would think that they would be. It's not one of these things where it's not like it's a technology company where they're coming out with new product, or it's not like a drug company where they're, producing a new product, where they come out and if they have a, $1 billion drug, then they make tons of profit. That's what I guess is weird. I never really gave it much thought. If anybody has any thoughts on it, shoot me an email. Just kind of odd to think that a utility company. Of course, then again, well, let's see. It's under the utility sector, but it says independent power and energy trader. Independent power product and energy trader. Is that TRDR? I would imagine. Huh. So maybe they just trade energy, and maybe they're traders of energy, and we know how hard trading can be, right? Maybe that's why. I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to kick that around and see if I can figure out an answer, but maybe there is no answer. It doesn't really matter. It was just a curiosity thing more than anything with that. So NYCB, New York Community Bank. A lot of the banks you can see have been beat up. B of A was up on the radar a little while ago, but not sure what's up with these guys. I mean, they seem to be, 7 to 20, then back to 7. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. And you can see we've been dropping off here. Looking for it to. It slowed down a little bit today. It had that big, after earnings, big push yesterday. And then today it slowed down a little bit with some lighter volume. So I like the looks of this right now. Looking for it to drop back to the downside. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. If tomorrow it pops up to the upside and breaks above that resistance, then it's probably gone. If it stalls out and gives a nice little hesitation, then I would look at getting into a bearish position. Pfizer. Looking for a bearish move here. Earnings coming up the second. So beauty is they haven't dropped a ton when you look at it and what the potential is of what it could do. You know, the first real targets are about 29.30 or so. But there is a potential for a long-term downtrend with this thing too. So, and it's been trending, obviously it's been trending down for the last 2 or 3 months. The last 2 or 3 weeks it stalled out and it looks like it wants to go lower. So we just got to be careful with the earnings. PPL Corp. This thing's stuck in this channel. I'm not a big fan of, as you know, trading off of the resistance, you know, a move away from the channel. I prefer the breakouts. So this is one I'll be keeping an eye on to see if it breaks out. If it does, it probably would happen tomorrow. Notice the volume is pretty light. So not terribly excited about that from a bullish perspective. So if it broke out tomorrow, it'd have to break out with some pretty solid force. Otherwise, I'm looking for a bearish move on this thing. Looking for it to return back to the 3260 area. Reynolds American, this is a beautiful, beautiful symmetrical triangle. And you look at this company, I mean, it has been almost, there's been very few retracements. You got back here in 2002, 07, 08, and the rest of it is onward, upward. Which Reynolds American, tobacco company, food, beverage, and tobacco, as you can see, and obviously if the, wow, they did a split back here too. What is that kind of split? 2-for-1 split. Very bullish. Everything's been, if the economy is getting weaker, a lot of times tobacco, alcohol companies will thrive because people are stressed, they're worried, and they, you know, I've never been a smoker except for when I was 19. I think for 2 weeks I did, and then I realized one day that if I didn't stop, I was going to get hooked. So I finished the pack I had, and never bought another one. So, and now it's been years since I even tried, and the last time I tried, and I know that sounds weird, but yeah, you go out with friends, and you know, I go with friends, and one of my friends smokes when he drinks. You know, we'll go out for free drinks at night. We'll go to a bar or a pub or something like that, and he a lot of times will have a cigarette. The last time I tried to puff off one, it was just like, oh, it just about killed me. So even secondhand smoke, I can't stand anymore. I started almost coughing when I smell it. So, yeah, I smoked for about 2 weeks years ago, and then I figured I'd get addicted if I didn't stop, so I just bailed. Why did I bring that up? Oh, because in weak economies, people get stressed, and that was the funny thing when I did smoke for that short time. I had one cigarette a day. That was it. And that was a weird thing, is I don't remember if a friend did, or I don't remember how I even got started on it. Or maybe I bummed one off a friend one day on the way home from work, and that's what it was. I'm driving home from work, and I was working a job where I was 8 to 10 hours on my feet all day, running around crazy. And I got in the car, and I remember I'd light up a cigarette, and I'd take a big puff, and just inhale it, and I could just feel all the stress in my back just go away. Total relaxation. I was like, wow. And that's why I almost got hooked. I was like, man, this is nice. And the next day I had one. And the next day, and the next day. And I only had one on the way home from work, and that was it. I didn't go out later that night. I didn't have any more than one a day. And that's when I realized I was going to get hooked, because I got home, I'd had my one, I had about a 20-minute drive home. It was all freeway, so it was like on cruise control, just cigarette, relaxing my back. I felt relaxed, long, stressful day, working hard. Get home, shower, clean up. Man, I'm going to have another cigarette. So I went out on the front porch, and I was smoking my second one for the day, and that's when I realized, I said, okay, this is not good. I'm starting to actually enjoy this too much, where I'm having a second one now. So that's where I made the decision, cut myself off. I'm going to finish. I had like 3 or 4 left in the pack. I'll have one per day, and then I'm never going to buy another one. I never did. But that's the thing. When stressed like that, you know, it was a big stress reliever for me. And I know that's why most people I know that do smoke or used to smoke, that's what it was about. It was a stress reliever. And so when the economy gets bad and people are stressed, what do more? They smoke and they drink more. Because it's a coping mechanism. It's a way to relieve stress for, you know, and that's what some people use. So these types of companies that we've talked about many times here a lot of times will thrive in weak economies. So this just barely broke out today of that upper end of the triangle. So I love the looks of this right now. The trend is in the direction of the upside, and people are going to be looking for, if the market is going to continue to fall, they'll be looking for safe havens. And this could very easily be one of them. So the money could move from a bunch of other sectors into this particular sector, and this thing could rocket to the upside. We'll see. It could get downdrafted with everything else, but earnings is coming out to 8, so that makes it challenging, but it does look pretty good. The only thing that makes me nervous about this, we got 6 days in a row it's been up. And today was the biggest with the lightest, almost the lightest volume. So that makes me a little skittish. Based on that evidence, those pieces right there, I would pull back and not do quite as many contracts. I would do a smaller position because of that. Same thing here with RRC. Big move in the last week and a half. If it does move to the upside, you can see the volume getting lighter this week. If it does break out and move to the upside, kind of a double bottom here basically, then I would peel back into a smaller position because of the risk. It very well could turn over from here, and this is another one that I'll look at. We'll see what the action looks like tomorrow, and if it starts to show bearishness, then I'll flip this plan over and look for a bearish move. SYMC, looking for it to break to the downside, but we also have earnings coming up soon, so I'm just going to breeze over that one, and I think it's speeding up. This one is very Synergy. Beautiful drop. I mean, it's dropped a good 50, 60%. It's going sideways for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and looking for it to continue the fall. If it breaks that 557, it doesn't look huge. I mean, this thing's been trading 4 million shares a day, so it should have some decent open interest on the options. Earnings is behind us already, so that's a good thing. We don't have to worry about that. And we got basically 89 cents of potential, which doesn't seem like much, but then you notice it's a $5.50 stock. You're talking a good 15, 18% drop. It's not huge, but if you can buy an option for 60 cents and sell it for 80 or 90 cents, you made a killing. That's a nice rate of return. It's a good 30, 40, 50%. So we'll see with that one. Verizon, not terribly excited. Obviously, huge run, earnings related. Earnings came out, and this thing just taken off. AT&T's at an all-time high, which blew my mind. I just went, really? I don't know. I was kind of surprised by that. And Verizon's pretty close. I don't think it's an all-time high, but yeah, it is. Yeah, Verizon's all-time high as well. Interesting. I'm just a little bit, I guess I just didn't expect that. I hadn't really thought about it, but wouldn't have thought that the telecoms, especially AT&T and Verizon, the two big players, would be at all-time highs. So apparently the economy isn't affecting them, even though it's affecting a lot of other sectors. Whole Foods, you can see, has been affected in a pretty big way. Basically cut more than in half from the highs there, and looking for a continued drop. I mean, this just looks like a stall out the last week and a half. Earnings is until the 10th, so we have a little bit of time on there. So we'll see. We'll see what that brings. But almost $3 of potential. That's a 10% move. WFT, another oil and gas. Oil has been, a lot of it has been beat up and I think probably oversold. You see this thing, I mean, 621, it was at $50. Well, it's been 7-8 years ago, but it was $24 here just 6-8 months ago. No, I guess that was a year and a half ago. But still, 24 down to $6. Oil, I think, is at a point where it may not be bullish yet, and there's really not a lot of signs of bullishness, but it's at a point where it can start to look at it as a potential long-term bullish play. Earnings out on the 4th, so that makes it a little challenging, but XCL took off today and ran with earnings announcement. So not much you can do about that. Sitting there dancing, it was looking good, and then it just took off. So then Xerox, to wrap things up, looking for a bullish move, and there's earnings. Earnings is coming out tomorrow. I'm not sure, unless they came out today and this isn't right, because that looks like an earnings move. I mean, stocks don't usually run from $9.20 to $10. Not a little stock. Doesn't have that big of a shadow and then close flat for the day. So I think today was earnings, and that date is wrong, but we'll see. Not much there right now. We'll see what it does tomorrow. It's possible that it presents a trade, but I don't think it will. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and call it a night. Shorter, well, long and short. I figured I'd go maybe an hour if I got tied up with a bunch of stuff, but 44 minutes, not too shabby for all the stuff we covered tonight. So y'all have a great rest of the day. Great weekend. We'll see you back very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.